from the Tampa Bay Times, Rick Stroud, back here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Rick?
I'm doing well, Rich. How are you?
I'm doing fine. The general sense around there is what right now?
Well, the wheels kind of came off. You're going to have to get some guys back healthy, that's for sure. I mean, you know, the people that Tom Brady relied on, Chris Godwin, Mike Evans, Leonard Fournette, that trio is going to miss some time. And don't know how much time. Certainly, I think they expect them all back by the playoffs. But, you know, look, New Orleans has his number and the Bucs number. They've won 7 in a row in the regular season against this franchise. They're, you know, Tom Brady is 0-4 in the regular season. They got him when it counted, and there's no question about that. We can talk about that game if you want to as well. But at the end of the day, this defense for New Orleans has Tom Brady's number and the Bucs number, and it doesn't seem to matter if Sean Payton's coaching or Kevin James or Dennis Allen. I mean, really, you know, none of that matters. It's just they're going to beat their ass, and that's sort of what has gone on here. It's been 2-score defeats. These games haven't been close, and to see a shutout, I think, you know, was most shocking. And even before those players went out, they were putting up the bagels. So, yeah, it was not a good outcome for them.
So you say they're going to miss time, all three of them. Walk me through what your sense of it right now is, Rick Stroud.
I think Chris Godwin's probably the most serious. He's got an MCL sprain. They're doing an MRI on him today. Haven't decided yet if he's going on IR. There's only 3 games remaining, so if they thought he was going to miss the rest of the regular season, they would do so. But they're waiting for some doctors to evaluate that. I think that Mike Evans has a chance to come back before the season's over. I don't know if he'll play this week. You know, those hamstrings are very tricky, but from what I understand, his isn't as serious as maybe Godwin's injury is. And then we'll just see with Leonard Fournette. He went into the game with a bad wheel. He had an ankle. He didn't practice during the week much. They're fortunate they got Ronald Jones, who hasn't, you know, played much at all this year. Maybe he'll be this year's, you know, Lombardi Lenny or playoff Lenny, you know, and the tables have turned, and he'll get the chance to carry the rock now the rest of the way. But, you know, those are the 3 guys, and Gronk, who had a horrendous day, that Tom Brady has leaned on during that 5-game winning streak to put them in position that they were in, but they weren't able to close the deal. So a little sobering, a little hurting right now in Tampa.
So this would be music to Green Bay's ears, that's for sure. Is it possible that the Bucs just figure out we can't push the pedal to the metal for the 1 seed? You know, we won it from the wild card position last year, and we should be able to beat Carolina at least once and the Jets with whoever we put out there and let the chips fall where they may, seeds 2 through 4. Is that maybe the way they go about their business the last 3 weeks of the season, Rick?
Well, I mean, what I found is that, especially with Bruce's team, they don't hold the pieces back. They push them out there for every game because – you know, you're talking about seedings. They drop down to the number 3 seed because Dallas, in a 3-way tie, has the best conference record for now. But they can still get back to the number 2. I think the top seed dreams are long gone. Green Bay's not going to lose 2 games, even if they went out. So they're probably looking at best 2 home playoff games, and then they'd have to go back into the frozen tundra, which they've done. And there'd be a lot of pressure on Green Bay, of course, to win it. But you can't count on no fans like they had, or 9,000 fans in a balmy 34-degree day like they had a year ago. So that's the best case scenario, is that they somehow win these last 3 and Arizona and Dallas lose a game, and they somehow get back to that number 2 seed. But there's no question they hurt themselves last night, and they're going to take a tougher road in the playoffs when they get there. Assuming they win one of these, they just need to win one to win the NFC South and get 1 game at home anyway.
Tampa Bay Times, Rick Stroud here on the Rich Eisen Show. So 2 stories that you broke, by the way. Congrats on that and your hard work. It's not just you covering the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. One in particular, though, involves a Buc and the fake vaccination card and all that business with Antonio Brown. I couldn't help but notice that we heard from Michelle Tafoya during the game last night that the Bucs were going to welcome him back, that he was not going to be sent packing, despite his behavior, is the only word for it. Why? What happened there, Rick?
Well,
this is before,
I
by the
think
way, the injuries. This is before everyone got hurt at the position last night.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well, yeah. Certainly, their opinion hasn't changed now, right? And so much for the the last strike thing that Bruce Arians said when he signed Antonio Brown. It turns out that Tom Brady is the umpire, not Bruce Arians. And Tom Brady wants Antonio Brown back on this football team. He's going to come back, and he's needed now more than ever for Tom to continue on and win these games. And anytime we asked Bruce about it, especially last night after the game, he said, those guys did their time. They deserve a chance to come back. Look, they get paid to win games, and it's unfortunate that Brown, has had these problems in the past and been selfish. And in this case, it was a very dangerous situation. The one thing I think people forget about the story is that he actually did get COVID in week 2 and missed the week 3 game in Los Angeles, which means he was sitting there unvaccinated around people like Bruce Arians, who's immune compromised as a 3-time cancer survivor, around guys like Tom Moore, who's in his 80s, and could have gotten somebody very sick or worse. And what influence, if any, he had on a guy like Mike Edwards, who's never been in trouble, we don't know. But they've certainly missed, with the injuries they've had, they missed Mike the last 3 weeks as well. But these guys will come back in here. They'll be welcomed by their team, obviously. They need them in these games coming up. And I just think that's the bottom line. They're not going to say no to Tom. They're not going to say that Brown has to pack it. If they're going to do that, and it was pretty obvious when he was suspended, they would have done it right away. It wouldn't have been one of these deals where, well, we'll decide that and kick the can down the road for 3 weeks. So we've always known he's coming back, and he'll be in the lineup and probably see a lot of targets on Sunday at Carolina.
Yeah, so he's back. This is it. He's coming back, and he's going to play on Sunday. And football-wise, I mean, what an absolute godsend that is. As much as I find it reprehensible what he did, lying about his vaccination status, football-wise, certainly with Evans and Godwin out, and we saw what it looked like last night without Fournette as well. Is there another kid anywhere in a practice squad that might come up and kind of dominate? I mean, we're seeing all these kids on the Detroit Lions make most of opportunities. I'm wondering if there's anybody, honestly, we see it around the league. Tyler Huntley for the Ravens. Who else might be there that we need to check out for the Bucs over the next 3 weeks, you think?
I think they're fortunate. The guy, you remember just a week ago, won the game in overtime with a 58-yard touchdown. Brashard Perriman is somebody that had a tremendous final month of the season in 2019 with Jameis Winston.
Right.
Had about 500 yards in his last 4 games, and Bruce Arians remembered that. He had been with 2 teams this year, the Lions and the Bears didn't play him at all. And I think Brady took a liking to him. He's a bigger-bodied guy. He's incredibly explosive, from a speed standpoint. So they'll get him back off the COVID list. He was unable to play this week. And really, it's just time on task. Brady has been so focused on really just those, 4 or 5 guys have been playing every week. Obviously the 2 top receivers, Evans and Godwin. He got Gronk back, who was a big target for him, although he had his worst game since he's been here. And then Leonard Fournette has been doing everything. So because of that, these guys don't get many reps in practice. So we haven't seen O.J. Howard at all this year. We haven't seen Cam Brate except very sparingly. We didn't see Scotty Miller at all. He was inactive a week ago when Perriman was playing. So they're going to use this week of practice to get the rhythm and the timing and everything and the trust back with those guys. And obviously he has it in Brown, who I would think would be a very busy man, depending on how much of a load. He usually keeps himself in shape. That ankle's supposed to be better. So heavy work day for him coming up for sure. But that's it. And then maybe Keyshawn Vaughn, who's a running back that, didn't make very many plays, and they put him in some key situations because, quite frankly, Rojo got tired. He was gassed. I mean, he's not in game shape. When he ran that 30-yard run, they had some critical downs after that, and Vaughn had to go in, and he hasn't played all year, maybe 19, 20 snaps. So these guys are here for a reason, and they're going to have to get ready and play at a high level.
Rick Stroud, Tampa Bay Times, here on the Rich Eisen Show. So Brady making comments to Sports Illustrated and the Sports Person of the Year award article that went along with it. I mean, I might be the only guy talking about it, but when I see Brady talk about that winning's a relief, that's the general sense, Those are the words that I normally hear from somebody that's thinking about more than just playing football, to be honest with you. And that's all we believe that Brady does think about. And we all look at him and think he can play to 50. What's the sense around there right now about him? They're just thinking this is just another year and he's under contract. He's going to be back. Is there any talk about it
Well,
at all?
I don't think they know definitively, exactly what Tom will do. I had been told last year when, they signed him to an extension, part of that was salary cap relief. He's not wedded to that third year after this season in any way. But, I think if he still feels well physically, he thinks he can do it till he's at least 45. But there's no guarantee, Rich. I mean, you can play this thing out in your head and say, well, what if he won another Super Bowl? Would that, and Giselle asked him after the game in February, when he won this Super Bowl last year, haven't you done enough? Well, of course he's done enough, but he also said in that SI article that, he can't picture himself at home watching guys play and saying, I'm better than that SOB. I know I could do a better job than this guy. So that's another part of it. And, for whatever reason, some of the better players in sports, they don't know when to leave the party. You would think it'd be the opposite. But, I mean, Michael Jordan hung the nets with a three-pointer and ended up being a Washington Wizard. So, you don't know. And I know he can still play, and he knows he can still play. But eventually, family matters are going to dictate what he does. And his wife and his kids are getting older. How much do you want to put them through with the sacrifice? Because he's all in, not just for the 6 months, but for the full year. Now, this guy doesn't really take many days off, and, he has some family time, but it's not anything like he's going to have. The problem is once you put those keys on the table, if you're Tom Brady, you're not picking them up again. And there's nothing, he said this as well, there is nothing that is going to replace what he has done in football, the relationships, the locker room, winning, the thrill of running out of the tunnel with 75,000 people. What else could he do that would replicate anything close to that? So he knows, the greatest part of his life professionally will be over. So I think he wants to extend it as long as possible. But I'm up in the air. I have no idea whether winning, losing, or anything short of injury would make him leave the game before next year.
Rick Stroud, Tampa Bay Times. Last one for you, sir. Your piece. I'll be honest. Wednesday night I was at the premiere of Kurt and Brenda Warner's new movie, The American Underdog, here at Los Angeles. And I come out of the theater, and I hear Urban Meyer is fired. And then I read the story, and it's like after what happened with Josh Lambo, I'm like, what? And then I looked at your story, and I read it 3 times, and I'm like, I cannot, like, what? Like, he kicked a kicker, like, and then asked him the next day of when you're going to put a smile on that face, and it just struck me as so outrageous. And Urban Meyer, to my colleague Ian Rappaport, has essentially said that's just not the way it happened. So I'll give you the floor on this. Rick?
Well, Josh Lambo, contemporaneously reported that to the Jaguars back in August. So it wasn't a situation where he just decided, let me jump on the pile here while Urban is taking on water. He feels for a lot of people in that Jaguars organization, he spent 5 years there. He's a successful kicker in his own right. And, the thing about it is what Urban Meyer, in his statement that he gave us, that I read with Ian, nobody is disagreeing the event happened. It's just to what degree. If we're talking about how hard he kicked a guy, that's not a great argument on his behalf, in my opinion. But, when you hear the language, the bullying that goes on, not calling specialists by their name, the sort of, I can only imagine what 18 through 21-year-olds, reacted to when they're going through it at, Bowling Green or Utah or, Florida or Ohio State. But it doesn't work at this level with professionals. And he was his own worst enemy from the get-go. So it's ironic, I think, that, a specialist may have been the last straw, something that happened back in August. But, all I can say is when I did the story, they were in crisis mode in Jacksonville. I had a lot of conversations with them. They begged me to hold the story till 4 o'clock. I got a statement from their legal counsel first, I got, a threatening letter from his attorney about publishing the story without certain information. We waited for their statement, and in the end, Shad Khan said he decided last Sunday or Sunday before that to fire him. But I don't know why you fire a guy on a Wednesday after you've let him game plan, go through a practice, and then disappear from the meeting. So none of this adds up to me. The organization is totally dysfunctional. They turned it over to a guy who wasn't capable of making the transition to the NFL. And he, in the end, I think he got what he deserved. But I'll grant you, I went to bed, and when I woke up to see that he was fired, I didn't expect that to happen that day or that evening, but it was a surprise to me as well.
Yeah. So the timeline was whose lawyer? Was it the team's lawyer or Urban Meyer's lawyer?
No, Urban Meyer's.
So what happened? Urban Meyer's lawyer reached out to you and threatened you?
Well, they reached out, and they, it's kind of Rich, because they wanted to offer up, a couple of players, but only off the record.
To corroborate that he did not kick Lambo?
To corroborate, not that he didn't kick him, but to the degree of which he kicked him. And I was willing to speak to them. My editor decided, since, it's funny because during this whole drip process, everybody was using sources and, well, who are these people? And if I catch a source, he's gone tomorrow, and this sort of stuff that you'd hear from the Jaguars organization. Then when their guy's under fire, they want to offer up, unnamed sources and players that, will back the coach, and which is fine, except that this was a guy that showed enough courage to put his name on the incident and was willing to speak on the record. But Urban's statement, which was included in our report, said that there were witnesses that would back his story. But again, the ones I talked to, all we were talking about is the degree to which he kicked him, not that he didn't kick him. So, that's a matter of interpretation. But overall, it wasn't one thing. It might have been the last thing, but they knew about it since August. So I don't know how Shad Khan and firing him for cause and all that's going to play out. But I give Josh Lambo credit for telling his story, telling his truth, and being very honest as he could be about it. And, in the end, the results are what they were.
So you're saying to me, Rick Stroud, and everybody here, that based on your personal experience, Urban Meyer's final hours as the head coach of the Jacksonville Jaguars involved communicating to you through his lawyer in sometimes threatening manner and also offering up players. So he's also spending his final moments as the Jacksonville Jaguars head coach asking players or identifying players or trying to reach out to players to say, hey, will you, unnamed source, talk to this reporter from the Tampa Bay Times to talk about how I really didn't kick Josh Lambo very hard back in August? That's what you're saying. His final hours, part of which were spent.
Yeah, he came off the practice field. His coaches didn't know why he wasn't in the meetings after that. They were in complete scramble mode since 8:30 in the morning
of that Wednesday.
The time that Urban spent when he wasn't working with the team was consulting his representatives, who were then calling me. I spoke numerous times to people about the details of the story, provided them with everything I had. They wanted an extension before we published till 4 p.m. We delayed it until 4:30, and they were in scramble mode. And that just doesn't sound like a guy that the owner had fired on Sunday to me. So, to what extent that contributed to it, I saw the reaction to the people, to the story from people. Maybe that had some impact, but Urban Meyer was solely focused on keeping his job because of Lambo's comments, and they had plenty of advance notice about what that story would say. And, they were just trying to refute it as best they could, but no one said that he didn't kick him. That's the interesting part. So that's all I can say about it. But yeah, it was quite a Wednesday afternoon.
All right. So you've been covering the NFL how long again, Rick? How long have you been covering the NFL?
A long time, Rich.
Okay. So where does this rank? Where does this one rank for you? Where does it rank?
It's a weird one, It's not often, It's just not often you'll write a story. I mean, I've had a couple weeks where got beat up pretty good by people after the Antonio Brown story, and 2 weeks later, 15 days later, 3 guys got suspended. wrote a Josh Lambo story, and Urban Meyer got fired the next morning. So the Miami Dolphins are not looking for me to walk into their building anytime soon. I can tell you that. But no, you don't like to see people lose their jobs, and it's part of our job.
Yes.
To just report and be very careful with what we say or what we allow other people to say. And we're a for the record paper. So everything we have written about both instances are people that are willing to put their name on it. We didn't source anything. And, I'm proud of the work we do at the Tampa Bay Times. And, other people like the NFL and Shad Khan and those guys made those decisions, not me. But I think they were important stories, and I'm glad we got them.
Rick Stroud, you're the man. Thanks again for your time here on this busy Monday. We'll catch up down the road. Have a happy holiday, you and yours.
Same to you, Rich. Thanks for having me.
You bet. At NFL Stroud on Twitter. I follow him. You should too. A must follow. Hey, you watched all the way to the end. Thanks for that. Watch more right here.